हस् धन्यवाद and thank you everybody for coming. म उठेर बोल्न सक्छु?
हुन्छ.
Okay. So when we first decided about this idea that what we are going to talk about this, so we tried to translate the topic in Nepali, but then we struggled how to translate the word precarity. And then we were talking, okay, can we change the word? I said, no, we can't change the word. That's the very idea that we are going to speak, we are going to talk about that. And then we decided that, okay, let's go with that. But before I get into this whole thing, I need to clarify. One thing is that I'm not a political expert about Nepal. I believe that everybody in this room knows Nepali politics much better than I do. The other thing is that, I mean, why, despite not having much understanding of Nepali politics, why I feel that I can speak or I want to speak on this is, I mean, I have been teaching this thing about how people imagine themselves under a subject that I teach, globalization, where globalization, and I talk about how Nepali society is changing or kind of accommodating with the global changing realities. So while I was teaching about those things, I tried to make sense of, okay, what are the things people are getting interested and why, what are the factors that are coming into people's mind that they are going behind certain things. Then I tried to kind of go and observe people when the local election in Kathmandu was happening and the vote counting was still underway. So I could see that, okay, people are reacting in certain ways. So that was my first impression or kind of first interaction, to observe how people are kind of engaging or kind of trying to imagine themselves in this changing reality. And then, there was another source I was trying to understand this thing. There's a tea shop in Kathmandu, place where I live. So that has this all independent, they all admire the independence and the new emergence, they talk about all those things. So I used to sit there and I used to just kind of be a passive listener, just kind of hear out whatever they are saying about this whole thing. Then, the third interaction that I had was, I was coming from Rupandehi and then I happened to be in a bus where I got to interact with now Yatayat Vyavsayi, who used to be a truck driver some 25 years ago, and now he owns around 22 trucks, and the bus driver. So they were talking about all this RSP and kind of how we need a change. So this talk today, or kind of whatever discussion you can call it, this discussion is based on those three conversations that I had, or interaction that I had. So from here I'll get into it. What do we mean by precarity here? So, precarity, I think everybody knows that, but something that is uncertain in a frightening way. Like, you don't know how it's going to unfold. And then I try to look at how the idea of Aam Aadmi Party, not the political party in India, emerged. And when I try to look into it, I realized that, okay, we need to understand at least three things. The conversation that's happening around us encompasses three key realities. One is that, okay, we need a change. But the question here is that, from what? Okay, the change that we are aspiring, so from what we want to change. And once we change, what we want, by what is going to replace that change. And then we are hearing this whole thing that, okay, the new forces do not have ideologies, so eventually they are going to die. But when we look at it, in a larger way, we see that, okay, there are other realities too, and just the absence of ideology may not matter much. So we will be deconstructing these three questions here. When I try to kind of, in those three conversations, what I found are these three things, okay? That we need change, we need a new force, because we are in this situation. Like, kehi change bhachaina, netas are chor, sabai neta chor chan, and Yogendra Yadav, the man who is behind the idea of in India, he also said that, okay, I mean, just saying that sab neta chor hain is not going to sort out the things. That's why we need an alternative politics. So I mean, sabai neta chor hun and kehi change bhaira chaina. आफन्तवाद छ, आफन्तवादले गर्दाखेरि समस्या आउँछ, हाम्रो लागि समस्या हुन्छ. अनि कार्टेल छ, त्यो पोलिटिकल कार्टेल होस्, इकोनोमिक कार्टेल होस्, कार्टेलले गर्दाखेरि हाम्रो लाइफ हुन्छ नि रुकिरहेछ, अगाडि बढिरहेको छैन. And I mean, I found this thing somewhere that there is kind of some subtle desire of patriarchal society, that society will be better off if we somewhere adhere to the norms of patriarchy. So I mean, I found those things in the conversation. And when I tried to look at it, I found that, okay, be that the conversation that was happening in that bus, I mean, I was traveling, or I mean, the senior leadership of this idea of alternative politics who are talking in televisions, when I tried to do a survey of that, I found that, okay, at varying degrees, these things exist across the spectrum. But I mean, I don't want to generalize that, but I mean, I found this thing happening across the spectrum. But I mean, when I try to look deeper at it, I realized that, I mean, when we look at the data, like Devendra Raj Pandey ji ko kitab cha त्यसमा पनि हामी हेर्दाखेरि 1980 सम्म 79-80 सम्म in Nepal almost everybody was poor. नेपालमा सबैजना गरिब थिए त्यतिन्जेलसम्म. And now we have barely 16% who are below poverty line. So that 84% change is kind of, I mean, great transformation. Asti, I mean, we take any indicator, be about education, be about health, be about any indicator, we find that in the last 30 years, a lot has changed. So it is simply not about it. I mean, I find that simply it's not about that kehi change bhaira chaina. Be that about that truck driver, he said that कि भाइ तपाईले थाहा छैन, हामी बच्चा हुँदाखेरि खाना चामल भात खानको लागि चाड पर्व कुर्नु पर्थ्यो. And अहिले त I mean, हामी बिरयानी पनि खाइरहेका छौं. So I mean that all these changes have happened in Nepal in the last 30 years. So I mean, how legitimate it is or how fair it is to claim that कि नेपालमा केही बदलेको छैन. So when people are saying that, thinking नेपालमा केही बदलेको छैन, that means there is something inherent to that. So I find that we are at a deadlock. That okay, we achieved, we are here. हामी त्यहाँबाट यहाँसम्म आइपुग्यौं. भात खान पाइसक्यौं हामी. तर अब के गर्ने यहाँबाट? यहाँबाट नेक्स्ट पुग्नको लागि जुन छ नि, I mean, हामीले बाटो केही पाइरहेका छैनौं. हामी पहिला स्कुल पाइरहेका थिएनौं. स्कुलबाट हाम्रो ब्याचलर त भइसक्यो. अब ब्याचलर पछि के गर्ने हामी? सो यो जुन डिपर क्वेशन छ यहाँ, डिपर क्वेशनको आन्सर हामी सिम्प्लिफाइड गर्दाखेरि केही बदले छैन. त्यो लाइनबाट हामी हेर्न थाल्छौं त्यसमा. सो आई मिन, आई फाइन्ड दैट कि यो तरिकाले जुन नि हाम्रो जुन प्रब्लम छ, त्यो प्रब्लम सिम्प्लिफाइड रूपमा यो तरिकाले मान्छेहरू वा हामीहरू हेर्न थालेछौं. Up and the idea of alternative politics. कुनै बेलामा I mean, एउटा एकजना इकोनोमिक्समा नोबेल प्राइज पाउनु भएको छ एङ्गस डिटन. उहाँको जुन एरिया अफ वर्क थियो, त्यो एरिया अफ वर्क गरिबीलाई कसरी बुझ्ने, अनि उहाँको एउटा सिम्पल एउटा वाक्य भन्नुभयो भने कि यदि हामी संसारको गरिबी बुझ्ने भने, इन्डियाको गरिबी यदि हामी बुझ्न सक्यौं भने संसारको गरिबी हामी बुझ्न सक्छौं. किनभने इन्डियामा खाने प्याटर्न के छ, इन्डियामा न्युट्रिसनल इन्टेकहरुको प्याटर्न के छ, त्योबाट बुझ्न सकिन्छ. त्यो मैले यहाँ किन भने कि अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्सको यदि आज हामी संसारमा कहीँ पनि बसेर कुरा गर्छौं, एनीवेयर इन द वर्ल्ड, I mean the rise of AAP in India, AAP as an idea, not as a political party, is very kind of instrumental, is a very baseline thing that we can look at if we want to understand the alternative politics anywhere in the world. So, idea of AAP क्यों? Idea, I mean, 2014 में AAP आउँदाखेरि India में, I mean 13-14 में. So, these were the basic slogans, I mean fundamental slogans यही थियो कि anti-corruption, India में धेरै corruption भइसकेको छ, त्योबाट मुक्ति पाउनुपर्छ. अर्को कुरा थियो कि हाई कमान्ड कल्चर इन्डियामा छ, जुन I mean especially Indian Congress जुन छ उसको हाई कमान्ड कल्चर छ. हाई कमान्ड कल्चरबाट मुक्ति दिलाउनको लागि it should be very democratic system, and that's why we need like आम आदमी to be ruling, I mean not exactly ruling but governing their lives. अर्को कुरा कि I mean once the corrupt politicians somehow they are sent to jail. They have a very lavish life there. Okay, so if we can end that lavish life inside the prison, somehow we can address the structural problem that are there in India. अर्को एउटा कुरा के थियो, स्पेशली द ब्रेन बिहाइन्ड द होल आइडिया अफ आप योगेन्द्र यादव भन्नुहुन्छ कि इन्डियामा वी नेभर टक अबाउट जेन्डर इन अ पोलिटिकल वे. ओके, वी नेभर टक अबाउट एजुकेसन इन अ पोलिटिकल वे. सो वी नीड टु पोलिटिसाइज वेरियस इश्यूज that are not seen in a political way, and that politicization is not essentially a negative thing, but the politicization of those issues implies that you want to hold accountable those politicians who are responsible to deliver on those things. So this was basically the idea. The last point was the kind of sophisticated idea of AAP in India. So the idea of AAP was came to address these political questions, political challenges that India was facing at that time. And what actually turned out to be, again, if we look at that AAP, it's all one man army, one man thing. That Arvind Kejriwal is leading everything, be that in Punjab, Gujarat, and wherever we go. अहिले रिसेन्टली एउटा न्यूज के आयो भने कि आम आदमी पार्टीको एउटा स्किम छ, त्यो स्किम अन्तर्गत फ्रेश ग्रेजुएटलाई 10 लाखसम्मको लोन दिने, सो द्याट दे क्यान स्टार्ट देयर करियर विथ द्याट मनी. एन्ड त्यो स्किम अन्तर्गत टोटल 20 लाख रुपियाँको उहाँहरू लोन दिनुभएको छ अहिलेसम्म टोटल. अनि यो देखाउनको लागि हामी यस्ता राम्रा स्किम लिएर आएको छौँ. 19 करोड रुपियाँ उहाँहरू खर्च गर्नुभएको छ प्रचारमा. So the whole idea of AAP eventually was कि हामी delivery में focus गर्छौं, हामी ideology में जाँदैनौं. And when we, of course, जे कुरा आउँछ सबै कुराको त हामी आरटीआई त नेपालमा बसेर मान्छे गर्न सक्दैनन्, तर इन्डियामै पनि जुन छ नि यस्ता जुन छ नि उसका डेभलपमेन्टहरु भइराछन्. अर्को कुरा के हो भने कि इन्डियामा प्रशान्त किशोर एउटा पोलिटिकल स्ट्रेटेजिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ. So he was very instrumental for their 2020 election. And it was a very close call between BJP and Aam Aadmi Party, and Aam Aadmi Party won with a kind of landslide victory. So, and this man Prashant Kishore once was asked that, okay, if you want to jump into politics, why not join Aam Aadmi Party? And he said that Aam Aadmi Party is more traditional than many traditional parties in India. And त्यहाँबाट अगाडि आउँदाखेरि when we know that, okay, very recently Aam Aadmi Party came with the idea that if you want to improve Indian economy, then if you bring that deity photos on the on the note, currency note, then Indian economy will prosper. And this was something, this was the last thing that when Rhodes scholars were kind of supporting, kind of arguing about this, giving sermons about this thing, the whole idea of AAP eventually died that moment. And very lately, the brain behind this whole idea of AAP, Yogendra Yadav, a political scientist, a few days back he was asked that, okay, what do you have to say about the MCD victory of AAP? And then he said, okay, fine, they won, it's a very good thing. And if I say that in Hindi, whatever he said, कि जब किसी घर में आग लगती है तो वहाँ पर दो किस्म के लोग होते हैं, एक के हाथ में पेट्रोल होता है, एक के हाथ में पानी होता है. आप जो है तीसरे किस्म का है, वो एक हाथ में पेट्रोल रखता है, दूसरे हाथ में पानी रखता है, कैलकुलेट करता है क्या डालने पर फायदा होगा, उस हिसाब से वो काम करता है. और ये तीसरी कैटेगरी जो है पहले दोनों से ज़्यादा खतरनाक है, पेट्रोल वाले से भी ज़्यादा खतरनाक है. सो द आइडिया ऑफ AAP that came to politicize the issues so that politicians are held accountable for things and people are aware of those issues. The AAP, the political party, became this. Okay, and why I am talking about AAP here is that Nepal's alternative politics is hugely impressed, influenced, or in so many ways imitated the AAP in India. So त्यहाँबाट आउँदाखेरि अब यो के छ त कि नेपालको politics of change, it was very precarious. It was precarious in a way that, okay, we have seen in the last 7-8 years a lot of things. Some way we can say कि last को एक decade में different experiments have been made. Most of those experiments failed, and then eventually we have what we have. So whatever failed, why those things failed, and whatever we have, why we have. Okay, now यो मेरो प्योरली मेरो एनालिसिस हो यसमा exactly कहाँबाट आउँछ. So when we look at, I mean, AAP, the idea of AAP in India started in 2013-14, but in Nepal the desire to have a kind of different system or different political institution somewhere started in 2012 when Ujjwal Thapa was in teaching canteen and kind of saw that okay, people from Madhesh are having a very miserable life. Then he realized that he asked his wife that okay, why, for how long we are going to be divided on the basis of religion, caste and so many other factors. So from there he realized that okay, we need to have some other kind of political debates on that. So from where he started informal collectives, and then I mean we all know that the trajectory of it, they came into politics, fought and kind of lost the elections. In 2016, Baburam Bhattarai formed a political party, Nyaya Shakti. It was also an alternative politics, and I mean I guess in my reading, Baburam Bhattarai's Nyaya Shakti was the only political party that came with kind of well-defined ideologies, kind of well-crafted paths that what they are going to do, how they are going to do that. But I mean, they also kind of could not make it. And then comes Saja Party, Vivekshil Party. They also fought separately and they lost. I mean, all these things, everybody know that. The point that I am trying to understand here is that Saja Party and Vivekshil Party, they came together, but suddenly they had to break out. Why? Was it because they had different ideologies, or they had a different kind of paths, or kind of whatever outcome they wanted? So when I look at it, Ujjwal Thapa, in his idea of Nepal, it was accommodative, that based on religion, caste and other identities, we should not be discriminating, we should not be further divided. And Saja Party, it also looked into, it also aspired for a singular Nepal, but that singularity of Nepal was kind of one nation, one language, and all those panchayat era thing that I mean in his imagination of Nepal. So they both had oneness of Nepal, but kind of the whole imagination of that oneness was completely different. I believe that was the reason that they came together twice and they broke out on both the occasions. After 2017, I bring that aspirational tribe. That is something that I define later. I find that there are a group of people who came together. I mean, it's not that after 2017 they suddenly and at once they came, but I mean it was a kind of moment. Maybe the build-up was starting from 2012. So that momentum actually created, there was a demand for some alternative mechanisms. So when I look at it, I mean the idea of alternative politics is essentially about voluntarism. If you do not have volunteers, this idea cannot survive. So when we look at it, 2016, 2017, Baburam Bhattarai and Saja Party, Vivekshil Party, these parties basically were supplying a new kind of politics. So they were supplying this thing. But after 2017, what we see here is that people started demanding a new kind of politics. So an alternative politics is only possible when there is a desire for change among the common people. If it does not exist, it cannot happen, regardless of how nice, how well-defined ideologies, how well-defined constitution you have. It cannot succeed unless and until people are demanding for that. So we see that after 2017, people demanded for this. For example, I saw that so many young people who are living in deras in Kirtipur, they used to cook their food in the morning and come campaign the entire day for somebody, and then in the evening they return to their homes and cook their food there. So it was all voluntary. We also see that there were so many public intellectuals at that time in Nepal who were wholeheartedly supporting this idea of change, this idea of new politics. So alternative politics को लागि voluntarism को आवश्यकता हुन्छ. यदि voluntarism छैन, that does not survive. But that not surviving doesn't mean that that political party will not survive. Whether the idea of AAP survived in India or not, the political party is doing really well in India. So, alternative of what हामी बुझ्यौं के को लागि चेन्ज चाहिन्छ, चेन्ज आएर हामी के पाउँछौं. So त्यो बुझ्नको लागि I try to understand that, I found that okay, there are a group of people who are trying to imagine themselves in a different way, okay, or there is something called sense of belonging. People are trying to reimagine their belongings here. So I have these three tribes for my own analytical reasons. These three tribes are, one is the traditional tribe. So of all those people who were poor in the 1980s or 1990s, which is almost everyone, majority of them came out of poverty, and I mean so much has changed in their lives too. And the process of that change has happened with the established or existing political, existing political establishments, okay, wherever it is. So the traditional tribe that I call it, I mean this political tribe is something that I borrow the phrase from a book called Political Tribe from Amichua, okay, of Amichua. So and this traditional tribe are the people who came out of poverty but not doing really well. They are still very much connected with the traditional political parties. So for them, the meaning of political parties, or the kind of the purpose of political parties is that they connect. The idea of politics for them is that to get connected with the state. So state, society, and the electoral politics को unit of relationship छ, त्यसमा politician को काम हो त्यो society लाई लगेर state सँग connect गराइदिने, okay? उसमा delivery को कुरा आउँदैन. And I learned this thing from my own constituency, where I have seen that okay, asking that okay, what my neta has done is kind of similar to blasphemy. Okay, you cannot ask what my politician did, or kind of what my neta did. If I belong to Nepali Congress, I cannot question my neta. If I belong to Emale, I cannot question my neta. So it's never about delivery. It's about whether my neta is connecting me with the state or not. That is the main question. When people realize that my neta is not connecting us with the state, they defeated him in this election. So this traditional tribe does not much care about delivery, and they are, they navigate their life in that state-society relationship, where the neta is just a middleman who connects the society with the state. Then we have aspirational tribe. So aspirational tribe is a group of people who from those societies managed to kind of succeed, and that success means that they came out of that societal connection, right? So now they are not connected with the politician, okay? So whoever that neta was, okay, that their father used to go and say namaste, now they no longer want to do that. They want to have a kind of different life in which that neta does not hold any longer that significance. So this aspirational tribe somewhere happened to be kind of turned out to be from the society. Now they are out of contact, out of connection. This group wanted this change, and the vacuum was filled by the alternative politics in Nepal. Aspirational tribe ma euta aru group आउँछ, about which I will talk later. Then we have this deserted tribe. This tribe is, basically the migrant workers who go from Nepal to, any other country, be that India or kind of other Middle Eastern countries or Malaysia. They find themselves that, okay, the state does not care about them. In Nepal, there is no one to talk about them. And when they look at Nepal, they find very much kind of, they see that, okay, they don't belong here somehow. मलाई लागि सबैजना त्यो फोटो हेर्नुभयो होला, कतार इन्भेस्टरसँग नेपालका पत्रकारहरू जुन छ नि, फोटो खिचाइरहेछन्, एन्ड यो त्यही बेला हो कि इन्टरनेसनल मिडिया इज आस्किङ क्वेसन टु Qatar administration, and Nepali media is not talking about them. So deserted tribe basically हाम्रो अहिलेको अल्टरनेटिभ फोर्स जुन छ यो अल्टरनेटिभ फोर्समा हामी हेर्दाखेरि माइग्रेन्ट वर्करको बारेमा मुभिज पनि बनेछ, माइग्रेन्ट वर्करको बारेमा एनजिओजमा काम पनि हुन्छ, माइग्रेन्ट वर्कर्सको बारेमा मिडियामा पनि आउँछ, बट दोज स्टोरीज आर इन अ डिफरेंट वे. When Mr. Balen talked about migrant workers, he put in the same line migrant workers ko dukha and neta ko chori. He put them in the same way. Okay, so that was first thing. I mean, in my reading, that first time somebody talked about, okay, you are there because our netas are chor. Okay, if we do not have chor netas, then you will get jobs here. And then we get that RSP, okay, त्यसको फाउन्डर जुन हुनुहुन्छ रवि लामी छानेजी, वहाँ वैदेशिक रोजगारीमा भएका मान्छेहरूको दुःखको बारेमा पनि वहाँकै लाइनमा जुन छ नि कुरा गर्नुभयो. सो त्यो लाइनमा उहाँहरू दे फेल द्याट ओके देयर इज समबडी हु इज टकिङ अबाउट अस. एन्ड आई मिन त्यो होल फाइन्डम एन्ड एभ्रिथिङ जुन छ नि त्यसले मिलाएर इट स्टार्टेड बिकमिङ अ न्यू काइन्ड अफ फोर्स हियर. आई एम जस्ट ट्राइङ टु कनेक्ट सम डट्स हियर. So I mean, we all can have different, interpretation for things. This is something I think it may sound a bit irrelevant, but this is the basically idea from where I wanted to talk about this. So I cannot escape, but I'll try to kind of narrow it down. We all know about this whole thing, the end of history. Francis Fukuyama, the end of history. And the end of history, clash of civilization, all these narratives were kind of यो एकैचोटि आइरहेको थिए कि क्लैश अफ सिविलाइजेसनमा के छ भने कि वेस्टर्न लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी एन्ड इस्लाम दे आर नट कम्प्याटेबल विथ इच अदर. एन्ड अफ हिस्ट्री के हो भने कि आई मिन ग्रेजुअली इभेन्चुअली अल द कन्ट्रिज आर गोइङ टु बिकम लिबरल डेमोक्रेसीज है. यो सबै कुरा सँगै भइरहेको थियो. यो 1989, 88, 89, 90 पछिको कुरा त्यहाँबाट हुन थाल्यो. तर यसमा एउटा बेसिक प्रब्लम के थियो भने कि 1979, 1980, 1981 मा रोनाल्ड रेगनको जुन एडमिनिस्ट्रेसन थियो उहाँहरू जुन न्यू लिबरल पोलिसी लिएर आउनुभयो, त्यो न्यू लिबरल पोलिसी ल्याउनको लागि उहाँहरू सबभन्दा एउटा जुन नेता चोर, सबै नेता चोर हुन्, यो जुन जति मिठो लाग्छ यो सेन्टेन्स त्यस्तै मिठो सेन्टेन्स उहाँहरू ल्याउनुभयो कि एउटा मुस्लिम फिलोसफर थियो, उसले ट्याक्सको यस्तो पोलिसी दिएछ कि ट्याक्स कम भयो भने विकास हुन्छ है. सो अमेरिकाको समस्या अर्को थियो. सो एट द काइन्ड अफ राइज अफ एम्पायर द ट्याक्स रेट इज लो. वेन द एम्पायर्स फल डाउन द ट्याक्स रेट्स आर भेरी हाई. त्यहीबाट जुन न्यू लिबरल फिलोसफी, न्यू लिबरल प्रोजेक्ट त्यहीँबाट निस्केर आयो. एन्ड वाट वी सी इज द्याट इन द लास्ट 40 years that has created a very kind of complicated economic chaos, not only in the United States of America, but in many other countries as well. ठीक है. सो जुन एउटा थियो कि क्लैश अफ सिविलाइजेसन, द एन्ड अफ हिस्ट्री, लिबरल डेमोक्रेसीज आर गोइङ टु काइन्ड अफ ग्रेजुअली टेक ओभर द इन्टायर वर्ल्ड. द भेरी आइडिया वाज रिलायन्ट on an Islamic philosophy or a kind of Muslim philosophy. So they had that contradiction. I'm bringing that contradiction to make at least 3 points here. By the way, when Ronald Reagan also talked about this, I mean, आफ्नो media interactions मा सबै interaction मा कि इब्न खल्दुन यस्तो मान्छे थियो, त्यस्तो मान्छे थियो, सबै कुराहरू उसको philosophy यस्तो राम्रो छ, त्यो हामी ल्यायो भने अमेरिकामा त्यो हुन्छ. But he was factually wrong on, I mean, so many grounds, and that very statement was tweaked, and that taxation policy is only possible in Islamic societies, not in a kind of free market society. But that happened. Anyway, how can we make sense of, I mean, why I am bringing that thing here in Nepal? First, Nepal मा जुन पंचायत व्यवस्था थियो, पंचायत व्यवस्था आफैमा एउटा व्यवस्था थियो. And there are some people who tend to believe or tend to claim that Panchayat Vyavastha was a kind of homegrown democracy that is alternative to Western liberal democracy. And then in the 1990s, I mean, we had liberalization, and that liberalization very kind of brutally jeopardized our whole kind of infrastructure, at least the industrial infrastructure that was developed during the Panchayat era. So, I mean, we see that there is some kind of frustration among our people who believe that panchayat व्यवस्थामा जुन जुन इन्डस्ट्रियल विकासहरु भएको थियो त्यो 1990 पछि आएर सक्यो. Okay, how eloquently, how appropriately that's being interpreted is a different thing, but we find that there is some kind of frustration about that thing as well. So our panchayat vyavastha came in direct clash with के भन्छ liberalization वा kind of western liberal democracy. Western liberal democracy को जुन new liberal project थियो, it was, I mean, kind of hugely based on that, I mean, Ibn Khaldun's idea. That was not compatible for that society. I mean, whatever they were saying about the clash of civilization and all those things. त्यसले गर्दाखेरि if we, I mean, Pankaj Mishra जुन इन्डियाको I mean, an Indian Indian writer हुनुहुन्छ, वहाँ पनि के भन्नुहुन्छ कि न्यू लिबरल प्रोजेक्टको जुन वाशिंगटन कन्सेन्सस थियो त्योबाट not only poor and developing countries were affected, but America also got very much affected. And the very reason that we had, I mean, he says that the very reason we had Trump is because in end of history, वहाँ आफ्नो किताबमा जब जानुहुन्छ तब वहाँ कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ कि why, I mean, he gives a kind of detailed view कि why we are going to have a kind of Western liberal democracy कि I mean, communism, Islam, they are all just like Western liberal democracy. They have very kind of sophisticated, systematic institutions. They have kind of their own moral grounds, all these things. But nobody in the kind of in any major city admires or kind of aspires to embrace those systems. But when now we see that okay, in the Western world as well, the people from the East are trying to assert their identities on the streets of those countries. Hey, somewhere our people in those countries, people from Nepal, find that they are failing to navigate themselves in those uncharted land. Okay, like the elites from India, the elites from Pakistan, they of course have a different space in those countries, and our people in those countries are not being able to kind of navigate that space, or kind of not at least equally. अनि यो सबै हुँदाखेरि one common narrative that sees that grandeur of golden old days त्यो सबै ठाउँमा छ, not only in Nepal but everywhere. So when our people, I mean the people from Nepal, when they look back at it, okay, they also see that okay, we had something big, we had something gigantic and great. If somehow we can revive that, somehow we will also have that thing. So this whole idea, the clash between panchayat vyavastha and liberalization have also to do something to kind of have also contributed in some ways, okay, in which we got that whole idea of okay, no, not again, because these politicians somehow do not fit in that thing. I don't know if I'm making sense here or not, but still. Now, so actually, with which they wanted to replace with, I mean, new system, the system that delivers them. But the problem here is that, I mean, somehow, कि 30 वर्षको पंचायत व्यवस्थामा गरिबी घटेन. गरिबी, I mean, पंचायत व्यवस्थामा एउटा मात्र थियो कुरा कि हाम्रो नेपालको स्ट्रक्चरल अरु केही प्रब्लम होइन, हाम्रो प्रब्लम गरिबी मात्रै हो. त्यो 30 वर्षमा गरिबी घट्न सकेन. That was, yeah, it's not only that कि हाम्रो liberalization ले गर्दाखेरि पंचायत गएको, but still, I mean, the whole project of the panchayat, the one reality that they, wanted to believe that this is our problem, to reality pretty change hona sakena. That was one of the major things. And here, the alternative politics somehow, I'm trying to bring that contradiction that new liberal policies had there, and the contradiction we are having here when we are trying to imagine our new ways of life. Now the question of ideology. First of all, I mean, the proponents of an alternative idea are very clear that we don't care about ideology. We don't believe in any ideology or kind of in any isms, because we already have too many ideologies, and ideologies never helped us. I mean, it is the argument of people like Yogendra Yadav or the people who created the idea of AAP in India. Likewise, when the three tribes that I am talking about, that aspirational tribe, okay, or the traditional tribe. The traditional tribe, they do not have a singular ideology. Some of them belong to Nepali Congress ko ideology sanga, some of them belong to some other ideology. They all have different ideologies. Just like that, this aspirational group, they have one thing in common, that okay, like we want a better Nepal. We want a Nepal in which whatever our politicians could not do, we can do that. So they want to imagine, they want to have whatever they imagine in their life, okay, a better Nepal को जे कुरा हुन्छ त्यसलाई उहाँहरुलाई चाहिन्छ. So basically the deadlock मा जहाँ हुनुहुन्छ अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्स चाहिने मान्छेहरु जुन डेडलक मा हुनुहुन्छ, त्यो डेडलकबाट निस्किनको लागि उहाँहरु जुन पनि आइडियोलोजी तिर जान सक्नुहुन्छ. सो त्यो एउटा कुरा हो. Yo, alternative politics ma yo ekdam, people are not saying that very clearly, but to the extent I had conversation somewhere, hamro panchayat ko bela ma hamro jun व्यवस्था थियो त्यो व्यवस्था आजको भन्दा धेरै राम्रो थियो. त्यो व्यवस्था आयो भने हाम्रो समस्याको समाधान हुन्छ. So that does not give a kind of very clear cut ideology, but that somehow gives kind of एउटा के भन्छ अगाडि बढ्नको लागि एउटा पाथवे कम्तिमा त्यहाँबाट दिन्छन्. Concluding thoughts ma, I do not have things to conclude here. I think I tried to make myself clear. But these are some contradictions that we have. Neoliberalism को बारे में त्यति बोल्नुको कारण त्यति मात्र थियो कि उहाँहरुको एउटा basic fundamental contradiction थियो. Neoliberal policy, neoliberal project was one of the most ambitious alternative projects that happened in the world, and that was one of the most disastrous project that happened, and that was not only for America but countries like Nepal too. So त्यहीबाट निकालेर नि हैन यो अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्स वाला जुन एउटा कुरा छ त्यहाँबाट यसमा यो जुन छ नि I see that there are contradictions. I don't want to quote things that I heard about this thing, but I found that people, some of them at least, have a different view of how they see the whole gendered society. Okay, so somewhere they believe that okay, a patriarchal society is better, will have a kind of better society for us, a better community for us. So that whole idea 18 वर्ष 17 वर्ष वाला जुन उमेरको कुरा जुन आयो त्यसको बारेमा हामी इन्टरभ्युज पनि जब सुन्छौं वा बसमा हाम्रो जुन कन्भर्सेसन भयो वा अरु ठाउँमा पनि कन्भर्सेसन सुन्दाखेरि they are very much kind of disturbed with this 18 year को जुन एउटा mark छ जुन 18 years वाला. So I found that there is kind of some across the society त्यो कुरा छ, but still त्यो tribe I find that okay, there is some more inclination that a patriarchal society will give us a better society. And यसमा एउटा प्रब्लम के छ भने कि aspirational tribe जुन छ is comprised by people who have made certain success in their life, and for them it will be very contradictory to kind of be part of that kind of society in which they have this contradiction. अर्को कुरा जुन है डिजर्टेड ट्राइबको बारेमा जो हामी कुरा गर्छौं यसमा एउटा कुरा आउँछ कि वर्ल्ड कप भयो फुटबलको अनि बी दैट हाम्रो मेयर वाला जुन सिचुएसन छ, बी दैट हाम्रो आरएसपी वाला जुन कुरा छ, they really talked about, they really build on the miseries of the migrant workers. तर यो बेलामा पनि जस्तो एउटा इन्डिया नेपालको के घटना हुँदाखेरि तुरन्तै विज्ञप्ति आइहाल्यो एउटा पार्टीको. तर वैदेशिक रोजगारीमा भएको मान्छेहरुको दुःखको बारेमा यो एउटा वन्स अ लाइफ टाइम अपर्च्युनिटी थियो कतारलाई अकाउन्टेबल बनाउनको लागि. बट दिस वाज एन एब्सोल्युट साइलेन्स हियर. यो एब्सोल्युट साइलेन्सबाट यसमा समस्या के आउने एउटा समस्या छ भने कि अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्सको जुन राइज नेपालमा भएछ त्यो राइजमा एउटा कुरा जुन छ कि भोलन्टरिजम एकदम थियो. इन केस भोलिदेखि त्यो भोलन्टरिजम हरायो भने भोलिदेखि त्यो के भन्छ जो भाइ बहिनीहरु आएर फ्रीमा प्रचार गर्थे, आफ्नै चिया खान्थे, त्यो जुन कुरा भइरा थियो त्यो कुरा इन केस हरायो भने यसको एउटा आफ्नो जुन अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्सको जुन डिजायर छ नेपालमा त्यसको एउटा फेट के हुन्छ त्यो हामी अहिले नै हेर्न सक्छौँ कि मेयरको चुनाव लोकल गभर्नमेन्टको चुनाव हुँदाखेरि देयर वर पिपल डिभाइडेड. People were either in support of the alternative politics or people were kind of against it. People who were in support of it, they were kind of very much vocal too. Excuse me. But now either they have gone absolutely silent or they started kind of, they turned their sides. Okay, now they are on the other side. So यो जुन एउटा वोलरिज्म वाला कुरा थियो त्यो कुरा इन केस हराउन थाल्यो भने द होल आइडिया अफ अल्टरनेटिभ पोलिटिक्स यहाँबाट हराउँछ. यहाँबाट पार्टी पनि हराउँछ त्यो कुरा छुट्टै हो. फेरि पार्टी नहराउन सक्छ. जुन पार्टी एउटा नेसनल पार्टी भइसक्यो त्यो पार्टी रहन्छ. तर जुन एउटा बदलाववाला आइडिया थियो त्यो बदलाववाला आइडिया यहाँबाट हराउँछ. फेरि भोलि कोही आएर अर्को पनि भन्न सक्छ कि तपाईँहरूको दुःखमा उनीहरू त्यो कमाए, अब हाम्रो पालो हामीले एकचोटि चान्स दिनुहोस्. सो त्यो जुन छ नि एउटा के भन्छ विशियस साइकल हुन सक्छ त्यहाँबाट. अर्को कुरा के हो भने कि हामी नो नट अगेन वाला कुरा जब हामी हेर्छौँ, नो नट अगेन वाला कुरा हेर्दाखेरि यसमा पनि एउटा प्याटर्न निस्केर आउँछ. कुन कुन पार्टीको मान्छेको फोटो त्यसमा थियो, कुन कुन मान्छेको पार्टीको फोटो त्यसमा थिएन, त्यो पनि हामी हेर्न सक्छौँ. अनि को मान्छे त्यो कुरा भन्दै थिए. अनि फेरि जो मान्छेको फोटो त्यसमा थियो त्यो मान्छे हारे कि जिते त्यो पनि यदि हामी हेर्दाखेरि हामी पाउँछौँ कि दिस होल आइडिया अफ नो नट अगेन वाला कुरा त्यहाँबाट फेल भयो समहाउ. ठिक छ. सो त्यो पनि के एउटा कुरा देखाउँछ कि प्रशान्त किशोर जुन इन्डियामा चुनाव जिताउने मसिनको रूपमा उहाँले लिन्छन्, उहाँ भन्नुहुन्छ कि यु क्यान नेभर डाउट दि के भन्छ विजडम अफ द क्राउड. If a crowd is waiting for somebody, that means they have something in their mind and that's why they are voting for them. So somewhere the people who are asking for a kind of changed politics, somewhere they fail to make them heard by the common people, not that the common people made the mistake. जुन हामी एउटा ब्लेम गर्छौँ नि कि यही एउटै मान्छेले किन जिताइराखेका छन्, एउटै मान्छेले किन जिताइराखेका छन्. So somewhere you are failing to understand that why they are making them win again and again. Okay, it's not the other way that they are making somebody to win again and again. ठीक है. यही कुरासँग म यो कुरा सकाउँछु. यहाँबाट एउटा कुरा के हो भने अरविन्द केजरीवालको पार्टी पहिलाचोटि जब दिल्लीको चुनाव जित्यो त्यसपछि अमित शाहजीको बैठक भयो. अमित शाह बीजेपीको अनि यहाँ पनि एउटा इन्डियाको ठुलो पत्रकार नेता पनि हुनुहुन्छ. अनि यहाँको जुन एउटा क्लेम छ कि अमित शाह वेरी क्लियरली सेड दैट अगर विकास से हार जीत होता तो शीला दीक्षित चुनाव कभी नहीं हारती. ठीक है. आम आदमी पार्टी ने कांग्रेस को हराया, लेकिन यह है कि अगर विकास के हिसाब से हार जीत होती तो शीला दीक्षित या कांग्रेस पार्टी चुनाव कभी नहीं हारती. सो दैट मीन्स दैट ओके व्हेन वी आर सेइङ दैट विकास भइरहेको छैन नेपालमा त्यसको लागि चेन्ज चाहिन्छ, दैट इज समवेयर फ्लॉड. ओके, विकास नेपालको लास्ट 30 इयर्समा ट्रान्सफर्मेटिभ विकास भएको छ. But the thing is that I mean those who are demanding for a change in Nepal or who are asking for a change in Nepal, somewhere they are not somewhere they are failing to articulate that for what they are okay, we want change from certain people, but change पाएर हामीले के को लागि change चाहिन्छ त्यो कुरा somewhere मलाई लाग्छ कि आर्टिकुलेसनमा बुझ्नुमा बुझाउन प्रब्लम आइरहेछ. त्यसले गर्दाखेरि यो जुन हार जित भएछ म नम्बरमा त्यसले गर्दाखेरि कुनै पनि बेलामा गएन, बिकज त्यो मेरो एरिया पनि होइन, म त्यति बुझ्दा पनि बुझ्दैन. इट वाज जस्ट अबाउट कि जो मान्छेहरू जित यो होल फ्रम द डिमान्ड साइड है, सप्लाई साइडबाट मैले गएन, डिमान्ड साइडमा वाट एभर दे आर डिमान्डिङ, वाइ दे आर डिमान्डिङ द्याट थिङ, त्यो कुरा मैले राख्ने प्रयास गरेँ. द पोइन्ट हियर इज द्याट कि विकासको लागि बदलाव त्यति प्राय हुँदैन.
धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद.